Hi, and so if you've probably watched my last video about the 3DS, I wanted to insert this little part there, but maybe it's a bit too much for Google to handle. Because we really have to be aware of how we consume our media, especially when it comes to things that are of any newsworthy value, like journal, news programs, documentaries, and informational videos. Unfortunately, that awareness is slowly sipping away because of the corporate algorithms driven by tech billionaires that have no intent but to make them as much money and to support their political agenda as much as possible. Many people don't even bother searching. They just click whatever the algorithm tells them to. Whether that be on YouTube, on a streaming service, or even on a news application. And we're currently seeing what this leads to. These algorithms only have their power because we are used to it. Because humans have been conditioned to accept whatever is fed to them in terms of media. And that unfortunately has led to outright misinformation being spread like a virus, which only empowers those politicians who are currently lying to hide their own tracks. Especially over in the US, the results of this are extremely visible. As opposed to Kamala Harris, Donald Trump won a landslide victory. In fact, in January 6, 2020, something happened at the White House. People raided it. And it was all because they have both been conditioned and conditioned themselves to accept what they have been told. Now, as for the being conditioned part, that is coercive education's side effect. In fact, a side effect so unwanted that it's yet another reason that warrants the complete abolition of the system right now. Back in 2021, in my first ever EAS scenario, I pictured an image in which, thanks to the coercive education system, kids rose up against adults to set up a childlike world in which kids rule and adults have to obey them. This has not happened in reality around this time. In fact, something even worse has happened. Those kids have grown up into adults and they have been unable to think critically of the media they receive. Now coercive education has always existed, but it has only been intensifying itself in attempts to fix societal problems that require systematic attention. This had the side effect of making people more sensitive to algorithmic recommendations. Whenever people see something that has been recommended to them by an algorithm, they would go, oh, I like this. They would watch it, and they would subconsciously assume what is told in that thing. And unfortunately, this had some extremely overarching political implications, as America is turning into a dictatorship. Literally. Donald Trump has told people, you can vote out once and then you'll never have to vote again because I will fix all problems. Put fix between quotation marks the size of the world's largest flagpole over a new capital of Cairo, Egypt. Because it is all belief. These idiots are abusing what their precursors have done to US citizens to persuade them into beliefs that are outright wrong. This is very visible, for instance, when it comes to fossil fuel. They say they can just drill, baby, drill, and get all the oil they want. No, because it is a scarce resource. It will run out. Meanwhile, if you were to instead throw all that money at solar panels, wind farms, and molten salt reactors, you could get decades worth of electricity with materials that are mostly recyclable. Yes, even nuclear waste here in Europe is being recycled en masse, especially over in France, by the way. But that doesn't matter for our discussion. The idea is that if a nuclear fuel is spent, again, after many years of use, it can be sent over to a factory that can then extract a lot of refissable material that can be thrown back into a nuclear reactor. Same thing is true for solar panels and windmills. They can be torn apart and recycled at the end of their operational life into more solar panels and windmills. The only real problem is energy storage, but that's, not easy to solve, but we are solving it. We are reducing our dependence on lithium-ion batteries by developing alternative battery systems, and even lithium-ion batteries themselves are easily recyclable. In my last video, I've talked about the chemical wear that can happen to batteries in devices like the 3DS. It's not a big problem when I replace the batteries with 3DS. However, for grid-scale power storage or electric vehicles that supply grid-scale power storage, you might think we're getting into a big lithium-ion crisis, except when I replace even a small little battery like the one in here, the materials that it's made of, including the lithium, can be thrown right back into the cycle to, say, make a grid-scale battery solution. Aside from this obvious lie, another lie is that of the tariffs. The US government had introduced multiple tariffs in an attempt to, quote, again, in the size of the world's biggest flagpole, strengthen our economy. No. Americans are paying the tariffs on the goods they import. They will continue doing so, and it will only cripple the US industry as it relies on raw materials exported from other countries. I meant imported, but anyway. Another example of objective, outright lying by the Republicans in the US just to gain popularity and take advantage of our inherent loss of ability to think critically that has been caused by coercive education and algorithmic media consumption. Fortunately, however, we here, at least my mom and I, never fully committed to the streaming lifestyle. We still have a lot of DVDs, and I've been buying in CDs. I do use covers, but that doesn't use algorithmic recommendations, rather hand-picked ones that are made by those who actually care about music. I contribute by throwing stuff onto my heart list. And actually, it just feels both more fulfilling and more responsible. Even on YouTube, I have never used recommendations in the last couple of years because I never had watch history turned on. Google no longer guesses what's the most popular, rather just leaves a blank page. Unhooked goes a step further by throwing me straight into the subscription field. And nowadays I actually use FreeTube, so I'll be feeding Google even less data, so even less algorithms can be confused or worse, misused. Another example of how the government has been abusing algorithmic media in order to basically lie to people, ICE. It is a group of idiots with a basically blanket license to ask papers from anyone passing them, or worse, arresting or killing them. Let that sink in. ICE basically has a blanket license to kill. And all the US Americans, also what I would call Yankees from this point on, because they're not the same as Canadians and Latin Americans, believe that the people who are being arrested, detained, or shot are illegal immigrants, criminals, and thugs. Remember that this confession is... No, this accusation is a confession. I threw it the wrong way around because this is so intense. ICE are the thugs, the criminals against humanity that are shooting up these immigrants or throwing them into detention centers to be deported. And not just immigrants that reside illegally. I actually mean immigrants with a green card. Even US citizens and veterans are subject to ICE at this point. And yet the people are told otherwise. How the f has our society gone this deep down? When video evidence exists, people simply dismiss it. Because it goes against what their algorithm recommends to them. What their algorithm and algorithmic media has imposed on them. But fortunately, unlike with coercive education that has formed the basis that allows algorithms to basically influence political opinions, there is an escape from algorithmic media. And that is simply to not use big streaming services. Yes, that's right. I don't really mean just YouTube. Like the dedicated, so I use YouTube without the algorithm, only search. There is no Netflix, no Hulu, no HBO, no Trackmine, no Disney Plus, nothing. And honestly, it's great that we are now able to think for ourselves. And now is the point where I'm probably going to parrot Donald Trump. Everyone, whether you're a Christian, Muslim, Jew, atheist, anything, as long as you know what you're wanting to go for, just go out and vote, not just today, but for every single election. Whether it be local, national, or European, if you're in the European Union and eligible to vote. And by the way, be aware that voter registration and voter ID laws are how we check that people are actually eligible. Unfortunately, a lot of people have been saying that there are ineligible people and duplicate votes. Duplicate votes. This might be true, but must be independently, not politically assessed. And that is why voter identification and registration laws exist all across the world. And if you live in a two-party system, like in the US, with a fast-past-the-post system, vote for the least evil. I would say over in the US, that is the Democrats. In the UK, that is the Labour Party. Yeah, the Democrats and the Labour Party have not been perfect in their track records, or even in their manifestos. But, unlike conservative parties, these have not sold their soul to the devil that is big tech, big pharma, big agro, big corp, and religion. I am definitely going to vote over in the municipal elections on the 18th of March this year, and I've actually used a dedicated independent online tool to assess who I'm going to vote for. In a multi-party system, so with proportional representation, this can be a good recommendation, but whether or not you do so, make sure to read the actual party manifesto of the party you're intending to vote for. Sometimes these registration systems make errors, or they are secretly not as independent as they might look. So just read the manifestos of some of the parties that you agree with the most, so that you know what you vote for. Don't rely solely on algorithms and algorithmically served to you media to determine your political opinion. Look up independent news articles. Personal websites, they can be great sources of information and opinions that matter. But also remember that you're not alone. We're in this together. Local support groups and activist organizations should be able to also provide additional information and background on your opinion. Oh. And apparently, the US is now shutting down entire universities and punishing students who are actively protesting against ICE and generally Republican policy. Take the risk. Go out, leave your vote, stand on the streets for togetherness, equity, freedom, and justice. With this practically rant over, I'm going to see you another time. Bye bye. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you do, please give a thumbs up and share this video with all your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.